All right, here we go. WNBA's officials exposed blatantly cheating for A'ja Wilson. I mean, this is blatant cheating. Breanna Stewart pissed off about it after the game, and she was had to speak to the media. This is nasty. We got things left, and this is what you guys do. Come on, man. The fix is in. They are just trying to give A'ja Wilson everything at this point. They are literally trying to give her everything. Jonquel Jones, no one on the Liberty is close to her with the ball. Look at that. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. WNBA refs, I want an investigation. I want an investigation, okay? Enough is enough. Like, the cheating has to stop. She's a great player without the refs being in her back pocket. That's just how I feel. She's a great enough player without having the refs in her back pocket. And of course, let me see. She shoots another 11 free throws. I mean, the girl shoots 11, 12, 13, 14 free throws a game. She's getting calls like this. Breanna Stewart, not happy about it in the post-game presser.
The WNBA just had one of the most chaotic weekends in its entire history, and what you're about to hear has fans absolutely divided. On one side, you've got a player stepping into an arena filled with thousands of people booing her. And instead of backing down, she embraced the chaos like a villain in a movie. On the other side of the country, something happened with just 17 seconds left on the clock that has the entire league questioning whether the officials are protecting certain players. A superstar player lost the basketball, it went bouncing out of bounds, and everyone in the arena knew exactly whose hands it came off. Everyone except the referees, apparently. But before we get into that nightmare scenario, we need to talk about the historic masterpiece that's currently happening in this league. One player is rewriting the record books so fast that the basketball world can't even keep up. She's breaking records that have stood for over a decade, doing things that shouldn't be possible, and making everyone wonder if we're witnessing the greatest statistical season the WNBA has ever seen. This video is going to break down every single moment from this absolutely unprecedented weekend. And by the end, you're going to understand exactly why this league is in complete chaos right now. Let's set the stage in Portland, Oregon, where something unusual was brewing before the Indiana Fever even stepped onto the court. The Moda Center wasn't just getting ready for a basketball game. Outside the arena, there was a massive pregame rally happening. The conversation surrounding one specific player, Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, had become absolutely electric. Her recent comments about a controversial topic had divided fans, and Portland was ready to make their voices heard in a big way. When you walk into an arena like that, the energy is completely suffocating. The tension hanging over everything is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Most players would crumble under that kind of pressure. Imagine checking into a game and hearing thousands of people immediately start booing you. Your heart's racing, your palms are sweating, and all you want is to disappear. The hostile environment would destroy most athletes mentally. They'd lose confidence, second-guess themselves, and probably play one of the worst games of their career. That's exactly what you'd expect to happen when an entire arena turns against you before you even touch the basketball. But Sophie Cunningham didn't do any of that. When she finally checked into the game midway through the first quarter, the entire Moda Center erupted with boos so loud it shook the building. This wasn't a scattered crowd expressing displeasure. This was a unified statement from thousands of people at once. The pressure inside that arena was absolutely astronomical. You could feel it through the television screen.
Honestly, today, we lost, we lost by 5, and there's things that we could have done different, and there's calls that could have gone our way.
Yeah, there's definitely calls that could have gone your way. There's definitely, I saw a major call with that ref cheating that could have went your way. WNBA got to get it together, man.
But the fact that we were fighting, we were in it for 40 minutes, and it's hard to have improvement off of a loss, but I want to say this is improvement because it's we didn't have to dig ourselves out of a hole. We didn't have to do all these things. We were just playing basketball. We were playing basketball against a good team, and they made more plays than us. And sometimes that's the way it goes. And now we move on and we look forward to Saturday.
Thanks, everyone. out of bounds in the fourth quarter. Did you have a good look on that?
Yeah, I did. So did Asia. She was walking back to half court.
With their.
Did you hear that? She says, so did Asia. She was walking back to half court. Crazy. Crazy work, man. Crazy work.
The noise was deafening, the energy was hostile, and everything about that moment was designed to break a player's confidence. What did Cunningham do? She completely flipped the script. Instead of running away from the chaos, she embraced it like a villain stepping into the spotlight. She fed off that negative energy. It was like she was saying, "You want to boo me? Watch this." Shortly after hearing the crowd voice their extreme displeasure, Cunningham caught the basketball, squared up, and buried a massive three-pointer that pushed the Fever's lead to 14-8. She didn't back down for a single second. She silenced the arena with her shooting, and the hostile crowd that was supposed to distract her actually became her fuel. This is the kind of performance that separates good players from great ones. Anyone can play well in a friendly arena with their own fans cheering them on. But stepping into an environment where thousands of people are actively against you and then hitting clutch shots anyway, that takes a completely different level of mental toughness. Cunningham finished the game with 13 crucial points, playing exactly the kind of role her team needed her to play. She kept the Fever's offense flowing, she hit important shots, and she helped keep her team surging forward throughout the entire game. What makes this performance even more interesting is the context around it. This wasn't just about basketball. This was about how a player responds when the entire environment is stacked against her. The crowd wanted to intimidate her. The noise was supposed to distract her. The hostile energy was designed to make her uncomfortable. Instead, she took all of that negative energy and transformed it into fuel. She became the villain that Portland created, and she played the role perfectly. The Fever were absolutely dominant in this game, and Cunningham's clutch shooting was a major part of that dominance. While she was silencing the crowd with her shooting, something even more historic was happening on the court. Another Fever player was busy completely rewriting the history books in real time. While the world was watching Cunningham handle the pressure, they were missing something even more extraordinary. The Fever controlled this entire game from start to finish. They came out hot, they maintained their intensity, and they never let Portland back into the game. This is what a complete basketball team looks like when everything is clicking. The Fever weren't just winning because of one or two players. They had contributions from multiple people, they executed their game plan perfectly, and they dealt with the hostile environment in Portland without letting it affect their play. Cunningham's ability to thrive in that chaos was one piece of a much larger puzzle. But while all of this was happening in Portland, something completely different was taking place on the opposite side of the country.
Let's take a look at some of the footage, shall we? Impossible angle. This pass is nasty. Look at this dime. Look at this dime. Caitlin Clark, head up, Kelsey cuts. Look at this. In between, she's passing in between three players before the ball even leaves her hand. And then whoop, it passes a fourth by the time it gets to Kelsey. Caitlin Clark made a pass to Kelsey Mitchell that passed four Portland Fire players before it got to Kelsey Mitchell's hands. Nasty work for CC22. Caitlin Clark from anywhere. Caitlin Clark creates space and buries a deep three. I love that little skip dribble she does as she sizes up her opponents. Up, in between, step back, three, right in your face. You ain't guarding that. You ain't guarding that. And you know what? She lets them know right after. She lets them know, you can't guard that shit.
Two powerhouse teams were about to go to war, and the ending would leave an entire fan base furious at the officials. While Sophie Cunningham was silencing the hostile Portland crowd, something absolutely extraordinary was happening in the same game that deserves its own conversation. Caitlin Clark was on the court dismantling Portland's entire defensive game plan, and what she was doing defied belief. The league is desperately struggling to figure out how to stop her, and against the Fire, she unleashed an absolute masterpiece of an offensive performance. This wasn't just a good game. This was a performance that's going to be talked about for years. Clark completely controlled the pace of the game. She orchestrated the Fever's offense with precision, making everyone around her better, and ultimately led Indiana to a massive 112-98 victory. This marked their 5th consecutive win, and the more games they play, the more unstoppable this offense looks. They're not just beating teams, they're dominating them. They're controlling games from start to finish. They're executing their game plan perfectly. But the individual statistics from Clark are what truly have the entire sports world in complete shock. Caitlin Clark recorded an unbelievable 26 points, grabbed 10 rebounds, and dished out 10 assists. That's a triple-double. That's the most versatile way to impact a basketball game. She scored at will, she controlled the glass, and she made her teammates better. What makes this performance even more remarkable is that it was her 4th career triple-double. To put that extraordinary achievement into perspective, she's now tied with Sabrina Ionescu for the 3rd most triple-doubles in the entire history of the WNBA. Think about that for a second. She's accomplished this in just her 78th career game. The previous record holder for most triple-doubles in league history was someone who had a much longer career to accumulate that achievement. Clark is doing it at a pace that's simply not normal. She's playing basketball on an entirely different level than anyone else on the planet right now. No other player in this league is putting up the combination of scoring, rebounding, and playmaking that Clark is producing night after night. She's becoming a generational talent right before our eyes. But that's not even the craziest record she broke this weekend. With that triple-double performance, Clark also became the fastest player in league history to eclipse 1,500 points and 650 assists. The previous record holder was the legendary Sue Bird, who accomplished that massive milestone in 116 games. Sue Bird is literally one of the greatest players in WNBA history. She's an icon. She's a Hall of Famer. She was the gold standard for what an elite playmaker could accomplish in this league. Clark completely shattered that record. She reached that massive milestone 38 games faster than Sue Bird did. That means in 78 games, Clark has done what took Sue Bird 116 games to accomplish. Think about what that means. Clark is operating at a completely different efficiency level. She's scoring more, she's creating more, and she's doing it faster than anyone has ever done it before. The previous record wasn't even close to her pace. Sue Bird's record stood for over a decade, and it was considered one of the most impressive achievements in league history. Clark just demolished it. The Fever pulled away massively in the 3rd quarter, going up by a staggering 18 points. Portland was completely out of it at that point. The game was over. But what's interesting is that even when Portland valiantly tried to close the gap late in the 4th quarter, Clark calmly sank crucial free throws in the final minute to completely and permanently seal the victory. She didn't panic. She didn't let the other team's comeback attempt affect her. She just executed in crunch time like she's been doing this her entire career. Looking at the box score, the Fever came out absolutely hot. They scored 27 points in the 1st quarter, 29 points in the 2nd quarter, and 34 points in the 3rd quarter. That's sustained offensive excellence. They weren't having one good quarter and then cooling down. They were scoring at a high level all game long. The 4th quarter is where things got interesting, because there's evidence that Clark was specifically looking for her triple-double instead of trying to pad her scoring total even more. If she was purely focused on scoring, she probably could have had 30 or 35 points easily. Instead, she was actively hunting for assists in that 4th quarter, looking to make her teammates better. She could have been more selfish, but instead she prioritized the triple-double. That's a specific choice she made, and it shows the kind of player she is. She's not just thinking about her individual stats. She's thinking about winning games and getting everyone involved. But while Clark was having the greatest statistical season in league history, something completely different was happening on the other side of the country. The Indiana Fever's performance in Portland wasn't just about Caitlin Clark's historic triple-double.
Once that 3rd quarter rolled around, Stephanie White said, "Hey, slow it down, man. We got to get Kelsey Mitchell this 20-point game real quick." And Kelsey Mitchell just kept shooting until she got that 20-point. We have to keep the streak alive. Oh boy. Caitlin Clark with her 4th career triple-double, 26 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds. Kelsey Mitchell, 13 straight games with 20-plus points, tied with Diana Taurasi for the second longest streak. She is now looking at Asia Wilson. She has a good amount of games to go to get the Asia Wilson 20-point game streak, but Kelsey Mitchell, she is on her way there. Before we get into the highlights, let's check the box score. Like I said, Indiana Fever came out hot, 27 points in the first quarter, 29 points in the second quarter, 34 points in the third quarter, and that fourth quarter rolls around. Woo! That fourth quarter rolled around. I did think in that fourth quarter, Caitlin Clark was, we were triple-double hunting. We were triple-double hunting. She could have had 30. She could have had an easy 35 if she wasn't triple-double hunting and looking for assists that Aaliyah Boston continued to pass up. Oh, wow. Great pass from Caitlin Clark to Aaliyah Boston, and Aaliyah Boston does a hockey assist to Kelsey Mitchell. Oh, nice pass. Caitlin Clark finding Aaliyah Boston, and Aaliyah Boston gives the ball to Kelsey Mitchell. Yeah, we saw too many of that, especially in the second half. Kelsey Mitchell, 26 points on 21 shots.
It was about an entire team executing at the highest level possible. This team is currently in the zone that every basketball team dreams about. They're playing together, they're sharing the basketball, they're moving without the ball, and they're getting open looks on nearly every possession. The offensive system that Coach Stephanie White has put in place is working to absolute perfection right now. Kelsey Mitchell, Clark's backcourt partner, was absolutely crucial to this performance as well. Mitchell extended her incredible scoring streak to 13 consecutive games with 20 or more points. That ties her with the legendary Diana Taurasi for the second longest streak of this type in WNBA history. Mitchell finished the game with 26 points on 21 shots, which shows she was putting in serious work on the offensive end. She wasn't just getting easy buckets. She was creating her own offense and carrying the load when Portland's defense was trying to focus on Clark. What's remarkable about Mitchell's streak is the consistency. She's not having one or two great games and then cooling down. She's been scoring 20 or more points night after night. She's the kind of secondary scoring option that championship teams dream about having. While opponents are worried about stopping Caitlin Clark, Mitchell is out there putting up 26 points and making clutch shots. That's why the Fever are so difficult to defend right now. You can't just focus on one player. You have to defend everybody. The offensive firepower on this Fever team is absolutely unmatched. When you have two players like Clark and Mitchell who can both create their own shot and get into a rhythm, it becomes nearly impossible to defend them. Portland was trying everything they could think of. They were throwing different defenders at the Fever. They were mixing up their defensive schemes. They were doing everything in their power to slow down Indiana's offense. None of it worked. Looking deeper into the statistics, the Fever's three-point shooting was particularly impressive. They shot 46% from deep, and those weren't all open looks either. Portland's defense was actually doing a decent job contesting shots, but the Fever were hitting tough ones anyway. That's when you know a team is in the zone. When they're making difficult shots, when they're hitting contested three-pointers, when they're shooting with confidence regardless of what's happening on the defensive end. That's the sign of a team that's completely locked in. Aaliyah Boston, the Fever's other superstar, wasn't having her best scoring night, but she was still incredibly impactful. She was setting screens, she was moving without the ball, and she was creating opportunities for her teammates. This is what good basketball looks like. It's not always about putting up the most shots. Sometimes it's about making the right play and letting your teammates eat. Boston did exactly that, and it's why the Fever's offense was so balanced. The ball movement was absolutely gorgeous in this game. Caitlin Clark was making passes that required reading the entire floor 3 passes ahead. She was throwing dimes to cutters, she was finding shooters in rhythm, and she was running the offense like a point guard with 15 years of NBA experience. There was one particular pass in the second half where she passed the basketball through 4 Portland defenders before it got to Kelsey Mitchell's hands. 4 defenders. The pass had to navigate through 4 different players to reach its destination. That kind of passing ability is what separates the best players from everyone else. It's not just about being athletic or strong or quick. It's about having basketball intelligence and understanding angles that other people don't see. Clark sees the entire court before the offense even develops. She's reading the defense, she's understanding where the open man will be, and she's getting them the basketball in rhythm. The Fever's pace in this game was also worth noting. They were running up and down the court, they were pushing the tempo, and they were getting out in transition. When you combine that pace with this level of three-point shooting and ball movement, you create an offense that's virtually impossible to stop. Portland was tired by the end of the game. They were defending the perimeter, and the Fever were getting open looks in the paint. When you take away one thing, something else opens up. That's how good offensive teams operate. By the end of the game, it wasn't even close. The Fever had completely and utterly dominated Portland. This wasn't a competitive game in the fourth quarter. This was a team that had control from start to finish. They executed their game plan, they got their role players involved, they let their superstars do what they do best, and they won convincingly. But while the Fever were dominating in Portland, something completely different was happening in Las Vegas. While the Fever were putting on a clinic in Portland, an absolute war was taking place between two powerhouse teams on the opposite side of the country. The New York Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces are probably the two best teams in the entire WNBA right now. Both teams have legitimate championship aspirations. Both teams have superstars who can take over games. Both teams are packed with talent. When these two teams match up, you get the kind of basketball that makes this league special. The highly anticipated game was an absolute nail-biter from the opening tip to the final buzzer. Neither team was willing to back down. Neither team was willing to give an inch. This was the kind of game where both teams are executing at a high level, both teams are playing tough defense, and the game comes down to who makes the last shot or the last play. It was competitive. It was intense. It was exactly what you want when two championship-caliber teams face off. Ultimately, the Aces escaped with a razor-thin 104-99 victory. When you're talking about a 5-point game at the end, you're talking about a game that was decided by very small plays and very small decisions. A few more made free throws and the Liberty win. A few more successful defensive possessions and the Liberty win. A couple of different calls and the Liberty might be talking about how they won instead of how they got robbed. Las Vegas superstar A'ja Wilson had an absolutely dominant performance throughout this game. She finished with 33 points and 10 rebounds, which is an incredible stat line. Wilson is one of the most talented two-way players in this entire league. She can score from anywhere on the court. She can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. She can create for her teammates. She can rebound. She can play defense. She's the kind of player that a team can build its entire offense around. In this game, she was doing all of those things at an elite level. The Liberty were led by their own superstar, Breanna Stewart. Stewart also put up a massive 26 points and 11 rebounds in this game. She was battling Wilson all night long. She was competing on the glass. She was scoring in the post. She was making things difficult for the Aces' defense. Even though the Liberty ultimately came up short, Stewart's performance showed that she's a legitimate superstar who can compete with anyone in this league. The game had everything. There were moments where the Aces looked completely unstoppable. There were moments where the Liberty seemed like they were about to pull away. There were stretches where the defense was suffocating and nobody could score. There were moments where both teams were in a shootout and the game was being decided by who could make more shots. This was the kind of back-and-forth game that keeps fans on the edge of their seats the entire time. As the fourth quarter rolled around, the tension in the arena was absolutely unbearable. Both teams knew the importance of this game. Both teams knew that making the playoffs isn't guaranteed. Both teams knew that a 5-game swing could potentially be the difference between home court in the playoffs and playing on the road. That's why every possession was being fought for so hard. That's why both teams were playing with such intensity. The Aces had a slight lead heading into the final minutes, but it was far from certain that they would win. The Liberty were still very much in this game. They still had time to score. They still had chances to win. That's what made the final moments so dramatic. Either team could have won this game. Either team could have lost this game. It was completely up in the air until the very end. What nobody knew at this moment was that the final 17 seconds of this game would become the most controversial moment in the WNBA all season. What nobody could have predicted was that a single call would overshadow everything else that happened. What nobody realized was that they were about to witness something that would have the entire league talking for weeks. The stage was set for a moment that would divide fans and have people questioning the integrity of the game. The tension was at an absolute all-time high.
15 points, 3 rebounds for Michaela Timpson. Outside of Caitlin Clark, I gotta say this. Outside of Caitlin Clark, I might have the most faith in Michaela Timpson to make a layup on this team. No bullshit. No bullshit. Outside of Caitlin Clark, I might have the most faith in Michaela Timpson to make a run-of-the-mill fundamental layup. To finish around the rim, even in traffic. Michaela Timpson right behind Caitlin Clark in terms of my faith in them. Ty Harris didn't really do much today, but I don't really expect Ty Harris to do much. She wasn't really a negative on the floor today, so I will give Ty Harris that.
The crowd was on their feet. The arena was electric. Both teams wanted to win this game so badly. Both teams were willing to give everything they had. Both teams were competing at the highest level possible. And then the final moments arrived, and everything changed. The last 17 seconds were about to become the most talked about seconds of the entire weekend. With exactly 17.9 seconds remaining on the clock, the tension was at an absolute all-time high. This wasn't just any moment in a basketball game. This was a potential game-tying situation. This was the Liberty's chance to get a shot off that could win the game or send it to overtime. The Aces were clinging to a narrow 98-95 lead. 3 points doesn't sound like a lot, but with under 20 seconds left, it's a very difficult deficit to overcome. You need a three-pointer. You need to make the shot. You need to hope the other team misses their free throws. Aja Wilson, the Aces superstar who had been putting on an absolute clinic all game long, attempted to vigorously drive against Liberty defender Jonquil Jones. This was a crucial possession. If the Aces could score, they would extend their lead to 5 points. If the Liberty could force a turnover or a missed shot, they would have a chance to tie the game. Both teams understood exactly what was at stake in this moment. During the physical drive to the basket, something happened that would change the entire outcome of the game. Wilson appeared to completely lose control of the basketball. The ball went bouncing out of bounds. This was the kind of play that happens multiple times in every basketball game. A player tries to drive, loses the handle, and the ball goes rolling out of bounds. It's not a rare occurrence. It's not an unusual moment. It happens constantly throughout every game. Everyone watching in the arena that night, and the millions watching at home, thought it was clearly off of Wilson. This wasn't a debatable call. This wasn't a judgment call that could go either way. This was the ball coming off of Aja Wilson's hands and going out of bounds. That's the rule. When a player loses the basketball and it goes out of bounds, the other team gets the ball. It should have been New York's ball. It was their ultimate chance to tie the game with a clutch late-game three-pointer. The Liberty would have gotten the basketball back with about 17 seconds left. That's plenty of time to advance the ball down the court, get into their offense, and get a three-pointer off. That's enough time to potentially tie the game. That's enough time to make things interesting. That's enough time to give your team a chance to win. But then something shocking happened. Something that nobody expected happened. Something that would make absolutely no sense to anyone watching the game. In what can only be described as a shocking and devastating twist, the officials pointed the other way. The officials ruled that the ball went off of New York, not off of Aja Wilson. This is where things get really interesting. The officials are the ones responsible for making the call. The officials are the ones who supposedly have the best view of every play. The officials are the ones who are trained and experienced in making these exact kinds of decisions, and they called it the opposite of what everyone else saw. Think about what that means. The arena full of people saw the ball come off Wilson. The millions of people watching at home saw the ball come off Wilson. The commentators saw the ball come off Wilson. The coaches saw the ball come off Wilson. The players on both teams knew the ball came off Wilson, but the officials saw it differently. The officials saw it come off New York. The officials made the call that protected the Aces in the most crucial moment of the game. This is where the situation turned into a complete and total nightmare for the New York Liberty. The team had already used their singular coach's challenge earlier in the matchup. In basketball, each team gets a limited number of challenges they can use to question a call. The Liberty had used theirs earlier in the game, probably on something they thought was crucial at the time. But now, when they really needed a challenge, when they really needed the ability to force the referees to review this play on the sideline monitors, they had nothing left. Because they had absolutely no challenges remaining, they were completely helpless. They could not force the referees to review the highly questionable, potentially game-altering call on the sideline monitors. Even if the referees had agreed to look at it again, the Liberty didn't have the ability to request that review. They were stuck. They were powerless. They had to accept this call even though everyone knew it was wrong. The Aces retained possession of the basketball. Jackie Young was fouled and hit her crucial free throws, and the game was completely over. The final score was 104-99, with the Aces escaping with the victory. But the victory felt tainted. The victory felt like it was given to them rather than earned. The victory felt like it was handed to them by the officials in the most crucial moment of the game. Let's break down exactly what happened in those final 17 seconds, because this is where the controversy really starts to make sense. The officials made a call that was completely contradicted by what everyone else saw. The officials made a call that directly benefited the team with a superstar player. The officials made a call that prevented the other team from having a chance to win the game. When you put all of these things together, you start to understand why the Liberty are furious and why fans are demanding answers. The out-of-bounds call is about as straightforward as a basketball call can be. The rule is simple. If the ball goes out of bounds, you need to determine which player last touched it. The player who last touched the ball is the one whose team loses possession. It's not complicated. It's not open to interpretation. It's a factual thing that either happened or didn't happen. A'ja Wilson either last touched the ball or Jonquil Jones did. There's no gray area here. There's no debate to be had. One of them touched it last, and that's the team that loses the ball. Looking at the video footage from multiple angles, it becomes absolutely clear that the ball came off of Wilson's hands. You can see her hands on the basketball right before it goes out of bounds. You can see her lose her grip on it. You can see it bounce off her fingers. The sequence of events is completely visible. The ball was in Wilson's control, and then it wasn't. That's a turnover. That's New York's ball. But the officials called it the other way. They called it off of Jonquil Jones, which allowed the Aces to retain possession. This call directly benefited the Las Vegas Aces in the most crucial moment of the game. This call directly hurt the New York Liberty in a moment where they needed a chance to win. This call decided the outcome of the game. This call gave the Aces the basketball when they shouldn't have had it. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. After the game, Breanna Stewart revealed something that's absolutely damning. Stewart said that she knew the call was wrong because A'ja Wilson knew the call was wrong. Think about what that means. When an offensive player loses the basketball, they immediately start looking for the referee to make a call in their favor. They're hoping to get away with something. They're hoping to keep possession. But if they know they made a mistake, if they know they lost the handle, what do? They immediately accept the result and start getting back on defense. Stewart specifically pointed out that Wilson was walking back to half court. Wilson had already accepted that she lost the basketball. Wilson had already moved on to playing defense. Wilson was no longer expecting the officials to give her the ball back. But then the officials called it in her favor anyway. The player who made the mistake was already getting back on defense. The player who made the mistake didn't expect to get the call. And yet the officials made the call that protected that player anyway. This is the smoking gun in this entire controversy. This is the piece of evidence that makes people think the officials might have intentionally protected Wilson. If Wilson had made a great play and was fighting for the basketball, if Wilson was actively trying to keep possession, then maybe you could understand the officials missing the call. Maybe you could chalk it up to a tough angle or a difficult moment to officiate. But Wilson had already given up on the play. Wilson had already accepted that she lost the basketball. And the officials still called it in her favor. The implications of this are absolutely staggering. It suggests that the officials might not have been making a judgment call based on what they saw. It suggests that the officials might have been making a call based on who the player was. It suggests that they might have been protecting a superstar player instead of making the right call. When you have a Ja Wilson, one of the biggest names in the league, and you have a close game in the final seconds, are the officials making the right call, or are they making the call that protects the superstar? The timing of this call is also crucial to understand. This didn't happen in the first quarter when the game was still being decided. This didn't happen in the third quarter when there were still many possessions to go. This happened with 17 seconds left in the game. This happened in the most crucial moment possible. This happened at the moment when one call could decide the entire outcome of the game. At that moment, the officials made the call that protected the aces. Looking at the broader context, this game was incredibly close. If the officials had called it correctly, the Liberty would have had a chance to tie the game. The Liberty might have won. The outcome of the game might have been completely different. One call changed everything. One call decided who won and who lost. And that one call appears to be incorrect based on the video footage and based on the evidence from Wilson's own body language. Breanna Stewart is one of the most respected players in the entire WNBA. She's a veteran superstar who has played at the highest level for years. She's won championships. She's been named to all-star teams. She knows basketball at the deepest level. So when Stewart came out after the game absolutely furious, people paid attention. This wasn't a young player complaining about a call. This wasn't someone overreacting in the heat of the moment. This was a seasoned professional who had seen enough basketball to know when something was wrong. Stewart did not hold back her frustration for a single second during the post-game press conference. She publicly exposed what she believed the officials had done. She boldly stated that she believed even a Ja Wilson knew the referees had completely blown the call. Stewart made it clear that she wasn't just upset about losing the game. She was upset about the integrity of the game being compromised. She was upset that the officials had made a call that appeared to protect a superstar instead of making the right call. When reporters directly asked Stewart if she firmly thought the call was wrong, she fired back with absolute unwavering conviction. She said, "Yeah, I did. So did a Ja." She was walking back to half court. Those few sentences captured everything that needed to be said about this situation. Stewart was using Wilson's own actions as evidence that the call was wrong. If Wilson had been genuinely trying to keep possession, if Wilson had been fighting for the basketball, she wouldn't have been walking back to half court. She would have still been in the moment. She would have still been engaged in that play. But Wilson had already moved on. Wilson had already accepted that she lost the basketball, and that's the most damning piece of evidence in this entire situation. It's not just that the call appeared to be wrong based on the video. It's that the player who made the mistake knew she made the mistake. She had already accepted it, and the officials still called it in her favor. The implication is that the officials made the call based on who the player was, not based on what actually happened. Stewart's post-game comments immediately went viral. The internet exploded with outraged fans who agreed with her assessment. The conversation shifted from being about who won the game to being about whether the officials had compromised the integrity of the game. People started demanding investigations. People started calling for the officials to be held accountable. People started questioning whether certain players received preferential treatment from the officials. What Stewart did in that post-game press conference was significant. She put her reputation on the line. She made an accusation of impropriety against the officials. She suggested that they weren't doing their job fairly. She did this knowing that it could be controversial. She did this knowing that some people might disagree with her. She did this because she believed the integrity of the game had been compromised, and she thought the truth needed to come out. The specific detail about Wilson walking back to half-court became the focal point of the entire controversy. This one piece of information changed how people were looking at the entire situation. Before Stewart made that comment, people could have dismissed it as just a missed call. They could have said that the officials had a tough angle. They could have said that it was a judgment call that could go either way. But once Stewart pointed out that Wilson had already accepted the result and was walking back on defense, it became impossible to defend the call. This is the kind of moment that defines a player's legacy in some ways. Stewart could have just accepted the loss and moved on. She could have been diplomatic in the post-game press conference. She could have said that the game was close and that both teams played hard. Instead, she took a stand. She said what she believed was true. She exposed what she thought was wrong. That takes courage, especially knowing that people might criticize you for making excuses about a loss. Other Liberty players and coaches probably felt the same way that Stewart felt. They probably knew that the call was wrong. They probably knew that the officials had made a mistake in the most crucial moment of the game. But Stewart was the one who had the platform and the credibility to say it out loud. Stewart was the one who had the stature in the league to make this accusation and have people take it seriously. The Liberty's post-game locker room was probably filled with frustration and anger. They had played a competitive game. They had given themselves a chance to win. They had done everything they could do. And then in the final seconds, the officials made a call that took away their chance. The frustration that Stewart expressed publicly was probably something that every player on that team felt internally. She just had the courage to say it out loud. The ripple effects of Stewart's comments continued to grow throughout the day. More and more people started analyzing the play. More and more people started demanding to know what the officials were thinking. More and more people started calling for some kind of accountability or explanation from the league. Stewart's willingness to speak the truth created a moment of accountability that the league couldn't ignore. The WNBA finds itself in a difficult position right now. The officials made a call that the vast majority of people believe was incorrect. A superstar player's team benefited from that call in the most crucial moment of the game. One of the league's most respected players has publicly accused the officials of compromising the integrity of the game. The fans are outraged. The social media is exploding with criticism. The conversation is no longer about basketball. The conversation is about whether the game is being officiated fairly. The league has to address this situation. The league has to provide some kind of explanation. The league has to do something to restore confidence in the officials and the integrity of the game. If the league ignores this, if the league acts like nothing happened, then the damage to the credibility of the league is going to be massive. Players are going to lose respect for the officials. Fans are going to lose faith in the competition. The integrity of the sport is going to be compromised. One of the big questions is whether this is an isolated incident or whether it's part of a pattern. Some fans are pointing out that A'ja Wilson appears to get a lot of free throw attempts. They're wondering if she consistently receives favorable treatment from the officials. They're asking whether her superstar status has earned her some kind of protection that other players don't get. Whether or not that's true, the perception matters. The perception that the game might not be fair matters. The other major question is about the coaching challenge that the Liberty had used earlier in the game. If the Liberty had still had their challenge available, they could have forced the officials to review this play. They could have shown them the video footage. They could have proven that the call was wrong. But because they had used their challenge earlier, they were completely helpless in this moment. Some people are asking whether the Liberty used their challenge unwisely. Some people are pointing out that the league's challenge system created this situation. What if the Liberty had been more conservative with their challenge? What if they had saved it for a crucial moment? What if they had been able to use it on this final play? The game could have been completely different. The Liberty could have gotten the basketball back. The Liberty could have tied the game. The Liberty could have won. But because they used their challenge earlier, none of that was possible. They were stuck accepting a call that they knew was wrong. The officials themselves are probably not happy about this situation. They made a call that everyone is questioning. They made a call that appears to be incorrect based on the video footage and based on player body language. They're probably receiving a lot of criticism right now. Their integrity is being questioned. Their competence is being questioned. Whether the call was intentional or a mistake, they're in a difficult position. Looking at A'ja Wilson specifically, this situation puts her in an uncomfortable position as well. She's a superstar player who made a mistake on a crucial possession. The ball went out of bounds off her hands. She lost it. That's something that happens to every basketball player. It's not a big deal. What makes it a big deal is the call that the officials made afterward. Now Wilson is associated with a controversial call in a game that could affect playoff seeding and the future of her team. That's not something she wants to be known for. The implications of all of this extend beyond just this one game. If people lose faith in the officials, If people start believing that certain players receive preferential treatment, then the entire league suffers. The competition loses credibility. The results start to feel predetermined. The sport becomes less about the player's skill and more about the officials' decisions. That's something the league cannot allow to happen. The real question that people are asking is whether this is systemic or whether it's just an isolated bad call. If it's just a bad call, then it's unfortunate, but it happens in sports. But if it's part of a pattern where the officials are protecting certain players or certain teams, then that's a much bigger problem. That's something that needs to be investigated and corrected. Meanwhile, while all of this chaos is happening on the East Coast and the West Coast, people are still talking about Caitlin Clark's historic performance. Clark is playing at a level that the WNBA has never seen before. She's breaking records. She's putting up historic stat lines. She's becoming a generational talent right before our eyes. And the biggest question people are asking is whether her historic season is going to be overshadowed by officiating controversies in other games. The WNBA has an incredible amount of talent right now. You've got Caitlin Clark breaking records. You've got A'ja Wilson putting up monster stat lines. You've got Breanna Stewart competing at the highest level. You've got players all over the league putting on incredible performances. The last thing the league needs is for the narrative to become about whether the game is being officiated fairly. The league needs the conversation to be about the incredible basketball being played. But instead, the conversation is about controversial calls and the integrity of the officials. This weekend was supposed to be about celebrating the historic performances and the incredible level of basketball being played. Instead, it's become about questioning whether the game is fair. That's the real tragedy in all of this. So here's where we are. On one hand, you've got Caitlin Clark breaking records that have stood for over a decade. You've got her becoming one of the greatest players in league history before she's even in her second season. You've got her putting up stat lines that shouldn't be possible. You've got Sophie Cunningham stepping into a hostile arena and silencing thousands of people with her shooting. On the other hand, you've got a controversial officiating call in the final seconds of a crucial game that has the entire league divided. The Breanna Stewart controversy isn't going away anytime soon. Fans are demanding answers. Fans are demanding to know whether the officials made the right call. Fans are demanding investigations and accountability. The question of whether the WNBA officials are protecting certain players is now front and center in the conversation surrounding the league. What do you think happened in those final 17 seconds? Do you believe the officials intentionally protected A'ja Wilson? Do you think it was just a missed call? Or do you think there's a bigger pattern of favoritism that needs to be exposed? The comment section is yours right now. This is one of the most controversial moments in WNBA history, and I want to hear what you think actually happened. Drop your thoughts below. Subscribe to the channel for more coverage of this absolutely unprecedented season.